This is Akashvani. In the program Spotlight Now, we bring you a discussion on Financial Stability and Development Council meeting, review of the state of the economy amid the global economic issues. The participants are A.K. Bhattacharya, economic analyst, and Lalima Aneja Dang, Akashvani correspondent.
The 27th meeting of Financial Stability and Development Council, FSDC, was on today in Mumbai, and we are going to talk about it. We have with us Mr. A.K. Bhattacharya, economic analyst. Welcome to Akashvani, Mr. Bhattacharya.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Bhattacharya, what is the significance and what was the main agenda of this meeting held in Mumbai?
As you know, that FSDC is a forum where the government's top policymakers, led by the Union Finance Minister, and the entire team of the Finance Ministry top secretaries, including the Finance Secretary, the Revenue Secretary, they come and meet all the financial sector regulators led by the Reserve Bank of India governor. There is also the Securities and Exchange Board of India regulator, the chairperson, the pension fund regulator, the IRDAI chairman. They all participate in this meeting. The main purpose of such an FSDC meeting is to assess what are the threats, what are the challenges, and what are the opportunities for India's financial sector in the current scenario. As you would know, that in the last few weeks, there have been some disturbing developments in the global financial sector with Silicon Valley Bank, the First Republic Bank, the Signature Bank. They went through a major financial turmoil. Even in Europe, you had a Credit Suisse bank which had to be sort of bailed out. Now, as you know that it is a globalized world and the financial sector problem can easily start inflicting other financial sector entities in different countries. Now, this FSDC meeting was aimed at taking stock of this situation and to make sure that the Indian financial sector, which has so far remained vibrant and stable, should not get unnecessarily harmed by whatever may be happening in the Western world, particularly the United States of America and Europe.
Well, FSDC, as we all know, is an autonomous body set up in 2010 on the recommendations of Raghuram Rajan Committee to monitor the macroeconomic issues of the country. It's nice to know that there is one platform where all the regulatory bodies meet and then decide the future course of our country's economy and after monitoring the health of our economy. You talked about the Signature Bank. Startups were affected by this bank, which were based in India. There is always a ripple effect, whatever happens anywhere in the world, especially in the US and UK. How do you think we can insulate ourselves? We've also had our own NPA problems. How best do you think we have been able to handle that and manage that?
I don't think in today's globalized world, and particularly in the financial sector, it is possible to adopt policy approach where we can hope to insulate ourselves, because it is virtually impossible in today's interconnected world to insulate any sector of the economy from the global headwinds or the global tailwinds. Now, if there is a global crisis of this nature where banks are falling by the wayside, then we cannot possibly say that we will create a wall, a barrier, so that nobody can enter our market and so that we are not affected. The important thing is to recognize this interconnectedness, and I think the Indian government has recognized that, and it is heartening to see how necessary safeguards are being put in place so that if there is any knock-on effect on the Indian financial sector, the Indian banking system can withstand those shocks without any undue harm to the consumers or the customers or the investors or the shareholders. And so far, I would say that the Indian banking system has followed a very prudent and a cautious approach without encouraging any adventurous steps by the Indian financial sector intermediaries. You are right that there was a time when the Indian banking system's non-performing assets were rising rapidly. But since 2014 onwards, we have seen the early detection mechanism and also monitoring of the loans that can turn sticky or can turn non-performing. They are being closely monitored. And by 2016, you have the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, by which the sticky loans or the non-performing loans were being looked at and either sent to the bankruptcy courts, the National Company Law Tribunal, or quickly resolved So we have not allowed the problem of the financial sector to persist and become a festering wound on our body, so to say. So I think that is what can save us, and that is what is thought to be done by the government through this kind of FSDC forum or interactions with the regulators, so that the impact of the global financial disease does not unnecessarily affect Indian banks and the Indian financial intermediaries.
We also had the merger of banks to take care of the NPAs, right?
That is right. Very, very true. There was a time there were about 25 or 26 public sector banks. Today we are no more than 12 or 13 public sector banks. So public sector banks have been brought under some broad groupings, and they become stronger, and they were more technologically more advanced, and they can take on and accept and face those shocks. I think both through consolidation as well as through close monitoring of bad loans, so to say, have actually gone a long way in making sure that India's financial sector remains vibrant and follows prudent policies.
When we look back, there are two instances which have changed the global scenario as far as the economy is concerned. One is the pandemic, and second is the Ukraine-Russia war. That brought the countries onto, if I may say, a road less traveled because they were unprecedented before. And they put forth certain issues which were, again, we had never thought of. Now, when we see that the US is going through a recession, well, it may be semantics because on the one hand, technically there is a recession, but there is an increased employment. On the other hand, we do see UK going through its own problems. Maybe there is recession, maybe it's semantics, it's hard to say. But what do you think that makes India fastest growing economy in the world? Despite what is happening in the US, the UK, and what the pandemic and the Ukraine-Russia war left us with, we are still going strong. Is it our traditional practices of saving, or is it that the government is extremely alert to any kind of signals and gets active?
I think there are many things that are going India's way. I think the most important factor that goes India's way is its demographic factor, demographic profile. India is still among the few young nations with more than 50% of its population still below 25 years of age, which means that it has the advantage of a young workforce. And workforce, if duly employed, will create more demand for jobs, at the same time will create more demand for goods and services. So with a young demographic profile, the demand side of the economy can be handled with less challenges. Now, that is one. Number two is that India is, after all, a large market and has got a huge domestic demand. It is dependent, of course, on global trade, but if there is a global recession or developed markets go through some sort of a slowdown, then it can fall back. Its domestic manufacturers can fall back at the domestic economy and address some of those problems which a smaller economy may not be able to face. And third is that India's governments, particularly in the post-COVID world, have gone in for a combination of policies which includes both introduction of welfare schemes, but at the same time, the governments, both at the center as well as in the states, have been spending a lot of money on creation of infrastructure. Now, what happens by the capital expenditure going up is that there's a virtuous cycle that you create, and by more investment, you can create more demand for goods and services. Because after all, the infrastructure investments create jobs, and those jobs mean more people have money in their hands, and they go out in the market and buy those goods and services, and therefore that creates a virtuous circle in the economy of more investment, more demand, and therefore higher growth. I think that is what has been happening here. But it is important to note that the private sector is not doing very well in terms of investments, because its capacity utilization is still struggling at around 70-75%, and nobody will invest more if the capacity utilization at that level. So private sector investment is not keeping pace, as a result of which what is happening is that the government has to step in, and the government's challenges on keeping its fiscal balance intact it has to face a big challenge. So those are challenges, and I think the government is grappling with them. So far, we also see a problem on the demand side, in the sense that the upper leg of the economy is doing very well with more demand, but the lower part of the economy is not showing a demand revival of sorts. So, but on the whole, I think the situation is under watch, and the government's budget last couple of months ago recognized that need for more investment from the government side and creating impulses in the economy which sustain demand revival and demand growth.
Right. You mentioned infrastructure. Truly now we are going for ports, expressways, waterways in a very, very big way. Of course, that will help transportation. It will help the economy, also create jobs, as you said. Also, sir, the fact that we are a consumer-based economy and now we are the world's most populous country, having overshot China. Does that help?
It is both an asset and can be also be a liability. It will be an asset if you can nurture this growing population through proper education and proper healthcare facility provision. Then it will become a huge asset and it will make India a country that nobody can stop from growing. But it can be a liability if you do not create the necessary healthcare infrastructure. We are not able to create facilities and systems by which you can train and skill these people, young people. So therefore, depending on the way you look at this demographic dividend, it can be a dividend, but it can also be a liability if you do not take necessary steps with regard to creating infrastructure and creating the skilling facilities that the government has been grappling with as well.
Yes, yes. Even during the pandemic period, we had a lot of skilling process going on and the ministry was creating an app to get everything in order, to streamline who has which skill and so
That's
on.
right.
And the fact that we had a lot of reforms like GST, collections have been growing up and a huge FDI in the country. Such reforms have also been a great help to the country's economy.
Yes, absolutely. I think GST has been a good thing. Its start was a little patchy, but I think it has stabilized for the last 2 years, particularly in the post-COVID scenario. We see the GST collections have been growing, not just in terms of simple absolute year-on-year growth, but if you look at as a share in GDP, GST's share in GDP is going up at a healthy rate. And it is not just because of inflation, but also because GST compliance has improved, the use of technology to map those segments of the economy which were earlier getting away from paying taxes are now paying. GST needs more reforms, which will be on the cards, rationalizing the rates, bringing the rates down further to make it truly, as the Prime Minister had said, good and simple tax. So I think GST has made that beginning. And also I think FDI is a function of how attractive you are as a market. And I think India does attract a lot of foreign investors into the Indian economy because it's a huge market, it's a growing market, the rule of law and the contestability of the markets are well established. So therefore, FDI flows have also been good, even at a time when global economies have not been doing that well.
Regarding the preparation with respect to the financial sector, since India's G20 presidency in 2023 this year, how do you think, how well prepared are we to lead the world as far as the world economy is concerned?
We as a country, we are leading the G20 group of nations. We are certainly among the major countries in the world, the fastest growing economy. But as I said that our leadership position has to be sustained in a manner by which the benefits of growth percolate down to all sections of society, not just a smaller section. There is fear that probably this growth, whether it is 6% or 7% growth, the benefits of that growth should not be cornered by fewer people, but by a larger number of people. I think the government is conscious of this challenge, and the G20 leadership can be truly celebrated if India can be set an example before the world of how to achieve growth that is not just sustainable, but is also equitable.
Well, certainly it has improved the confidence of the Indian citizens. Thank you very much, Mr. A.K. Bhattacharya, for talking.
Thank you very much.
You were listening to a discussion on Financial Stability and Development Council meeting, review of the state of the economy amid the global economic issues. The participants were A.K. Bhattacharya, economic analyst, and Lalima Aneja Dang, Akashvani correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on our mobile app News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsdtalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 9289094044.